There's something I've learned after decades of helping people set goals, build wealth, and reinvent their lives. The people who succeed the fastest aren't the most talented. They're the ones who act like they have no way out. Because here's the truth, no one wants to say out loud, as long as you believe failure is an option, you'll move like someone with a backup plan. You'll move slower, you'll negotiate with fear, you'll take longer to decide. You'll find ways to stay busy instead of being effective. And worst of all, you'll start rehearsing your excuses before you even fail. I've seen this pattern over and over again. Someone sets a goal, big goal, powerful goal, something that could transform their income, their health, their identity. At first, they're on fire. But then discomfort shows up. Doubt creeps in, resistance starts whispering, and what do? They start talking about timing. They tell themselves, maybe I'll revisit this next year. They say things like, at least I tried, or the most dangerous lie of all, maybe it wasn't meant to be. But I want to ask you something. What would change if you removed failure from the equation? If it wasn't just plan A, it was the only plan? In this video, I'm going to teach you how to shift your mindset, your habits, and your identity into a state where you move with certainty. Not because you're arrogant, but because you've made a decision that failure simply is not on the table. You'll learn how to build unstoppable follow-through haven in the face of setbacks. Why trying is often just disguised hesitation. How to use pressure as fuel, not fear. And how to wire your mind to act like the future depends on this moment, because it does. I want you to imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a cliff. Behind you is everything you know, comfort, routine, predictability. In front of you is everything you want, impact, legacy, total transformation. And right now, you're deciding whether to take the leap. Most people won't. Not because they don't want what's ahead, but because they leave a ladder behind them just in case. That ladder, it's failure. It's doubt. It's the idea that I'll try this, but I'm not all in. And as long as that ladder's there, you'll never leap like your life depends on it. But what if today you burned the ladder? What if today you decided to move like someone with no escape plan? Not reckless, not frantic, but with calm, focused intensity. With the posture of someone who doesn't hope they'll win, they've already decided. That's what I'm going to teach you. Not how to try harder, but how to eliminate the option to retreat. Because when failure is no longer an option, every part of you begins to rise. And the best version of you, he's not hesitant. He's not halfway in. He's not holding back just in case. He's all in. Let's get something straight. Trying is not the same as committing. Trying is a trap. It feels noble. It feels responsible. But most of the time, trying is what people do when they're not ready to burn the bridge behind them. You've heard it before. I'll give it a shot. I'll see how it goes. I'll do my best. It sounds like effort, but in reality, it's a pre-approved excuse to fail. Why? Because trying gives you emotional wiggle room. It says, if I don't succeed, at least I didn't fully commit. It's how we protect our egos while pretending we're pursuing greatness. But here's the truth I've seen over and over again. The people who rise, the people who win, the people who defy odds, they don't try, they decide, they don't test the waters with one foot. They dive in fully submerged in responsibility, ownership, and urgency. You see, the brain is incredibly intelligent. It listens to your words, it observes your behavior, and if you move like someone who's trying, it holds back your energy. It says, let's wait and see how serious this is. But when you move like someone who has no alternative, the brain recruits every ounce of focus, creativity, and grit you possess. Because it knows we're in this. For real, for good, until it's done. Let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. In the last big goal you set for yourself, did you move like someone who had no other option, or like someone who hoped things would work out? This distinction might be the most important of your life. Because everything you want, every goal that scares you, every result that would make you unrecognizable in the best way is sitting behind one shift from I'll try to I'll finish. You don't need more hacks. You don't need more motivation. You need to move like this is your final attempt. Because when you do, your actions change. Your urgency sharpens. Your decision-making tightens. You start turning off your phone instead of checking it real quick. You start saying no to distractions that used to own your time. You start executing on the scary stuff before noon because you're done pushing it off. And here's the most incredible part. When you act like failure isn't an option, the quality of your thoughts begins to rise. You start asking better questions. How can I make this work no matter what? What's my fastest route through this block? If this absolutely had to happen this month, what would I change today? These are not the questions of someone who's trying. These are the questions of someone who has already decided. Now, I'm going to say something that might hit hard. Hesitation is the most expensive habit you have. It costs you time. It costs you opportunities. It costs you momentum, and sometimes it costs you everything. Because while you're hesitating, someone else who's no smarter, no more talented, and no more deserving is taking your spot. Why? Because they moved. They acted. They invested. They jumped. They didn't wait for perfect. They didn't rehearse all the risks. They burned the bridge, they lit the match, and they never looked back. And now, they're further along than you not, because they're better, but because they stopped playing defense and finally played to win. I want you to make a decision right now, not tomorrow, not after you think about it. Ask yourself, what area of your life are you trying when you should be acting like failure is not an option? Name it, own it, and then eliminate the backup plan. Tell someone you trust that you're all in. Delete the fallback, schedule the uncomfortable action. Cancel the thing that divides your focus. Move like someone who's betting everything on this working. Because once you remove the exit signs from your mind, you'll be shocked at how fast the road opens up. And in the next block, I'll show you exactly how to retrain your identity so your beliefs, behaviors, and energy all match someone who's already achieved the goal. Because when failure isn't on the table, you don't just act differently, you become someone else entirely. When you eliminate failure as an option, something radical begins to happen. Your identity starts to shift. Not overnight, not all at once, but gradually until the old version of you no longer fits the goals you're chasing. And that's exactly the point. Most people try to achieve new outcomes while clinging to an outdated identity. They say they want to build a business, double their income, run a marathon, but their habits, their language, their posture still reflect someone who's unsure, who's part-time, who's hoping. But the moment you act like failure is off the table, your mind begins asking a better question: who must I become to carry this outcome to the finish line? That's where everything changes. Because you don't attract the life you want. You attract the life that matches your standards. And your standards are born from your identity. So the work now becomes simple, not easy. Begin aligning everything about you to the version of yourself that already won. Start with your language. Do you speak like someone who's building or someone who's bargaining? High performers speak in absolutes. I will. It's done. This happens. They speak from decision, not desire. You'll never hear them say, I'm trying to, or hopefully one day. They've deleted uncertainty from their vocabulary because they've deleted the option to fail. Now look at your habits. Do your daily actions reflect someone who can carry the weight of your goals? Because it's not about dramatic gestures, it's about invisible pattern. The 6 a.m. workout when it's raining. The call you make even when it feels awkward. The email you send instead of avoiding. It's the discipline to take the next hard step without applause. That's how identity is installed, one quiet decision at a time. And then there's energy. The most successful people I know protect their energy like a bank account. They don't lend time to distractions. They don't make space for people who drain them. They don't explain themselves to skeptics. Why? Because when you've decided that failure isn't an option, your time becomes sacred. Every conversation, every minute, every habit must reinforce who you're becoming, not who you were. This doesn't mean pretending to be something you're not. It means rehearsing the future version of you until it feels normal, until it becomes the default. Because here's what you need to understand. The fastest way to become someone new is to behave as if it's already true, not in some fake-it way, in a deeply strategic way. You walk like them. Think like them. Show up like them. And soon the gap between you and that version begins to close. Because the brain can't distinguish between rehearsal and reality. It builds connections based on repetition. And if you repeat confidence, resilience, ownership, focus, you become it. Now, you might feel resistance here. That voice might say, but what if I'm faking it? No, you're forming it. You're installing new software in a system that's been running the same hesitant code for years. It will glitch, it will push back, but if you stay the course, you'll override the old patterns. And when that happens, when your thoughts, words, and behaviors all say the same thing, I do not quit, I do not lose, I do not negotiate with fear, you'll start to notice a shift. People will respond to you differently. Opportunities will come more often. You'll feel more stable, more certain, more powerful, not because the world changed, but because your posture told the world how to treat you. That's the gift of identity. When you stop making room for failure, you stop giving it power over your decisions. In the next block, we're going to confront the emotional resistance that tries to pull you back when things get tough: fear, doubt, exhaustion, and how to silence those voices with calm, decisive action. But for now, sit with this question. If failure wasn't on the table, if it was truly not allowed, how would you act today? That's who you need to become. Let me be real with you. Even when you've committed fully, even when you've removed failure as an option, the resistance doesn't just vanish. It just gets quieter, sneakier. And if you're not careful, it will start speaking with your voice. It'll sound like reason. It'll sound like caution. It'll sound like being smart. But don't be fooled, because underneath those logical excuses lives the same old fear dressed in a new outfit. I need to wait until things are more stable. This might not be the right time. I should do a little more research first. Do any of these sound familiar? That's not logic. That's hesitation pretending to protect you. Here's what I know. Whenever you're about to level up, whether in business, health, mindset, relationships, the mind will panic. It's wired to keep you safe, not successful. And if you don't learn how to manage that voice, it will run your life while convincing you that you're still in control. So how do you deal with it? You don't fight it. You don't argue with it. You acknowledge it, and then you act anyway. Because the antidote to fear is not comfort, it's movement. Every time I've done something that changed my life, whether it was launching a program, speaking on stages, making a massive investment, I felt resistance. But I also knew the presence of fear is a signal, not a stop sign. Fear means there's something important ahead, something big enough to shake your nervous system, something that could rewrite your story if you step into it. And the worst thing you can do is pause and negotiate. The longer you sit in indecision, the more power you give to fear. Here's what I practice and what I teach every one of my clients. When resistance shows up, respond immediately with motion. Not perfection, not clarity, just movement. Pick up the phone, send the message, launch the page, say the number, make the ask, take the step, because once you prove to your brain that you're not controlled by emotion, something incredible happens. You rewire your identity as someone who takes action regardless of feelings. That is power. That is leadership. That is the beginning of emotional mastery. Let me tell you something you already know, but maybe forgot. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the ability to act in its presence. The people you admire, they didn't get rid of fear. They just got so aligned with their mission that fear had no say anymore. You want to become unshakable? Then stop waiting for fear to go away. It won't. Instead, build the muscle of following through anyway. The first time will feel terrifying. The second time will feel uncomfortable. The 10th time will feel normal. The 100th time, that's when you become a machine. Let me leave you with this. Discipline is a decision you make once. Courage is a decision you make every day. And if you want to live a life where failure is not an option, you better get used to making that decision over and over until it becomes who you are. In the next block, I'll show you how to use pressure to your advantage, turning stress and urgency into fuel for executions, so you stop running from tension and start harnessing it like the top performers do. Because when you can stay calm in the fire, you don't just avoid failure, you start creating inevitability. Most people spend their lives running from pressure. They associate it with breakdowns, anxiety, burnout. But what they fail to understand is this: pressure is not the enemy. Mismanaged pressure is. If you've decided that failure is not an option, you can't afford to avoid pressure. You have to learn how to use it. Pressure, when embraced, is pure focus. It sharpens decision-making. It cuts through noise. It forces action. Look at anyone who's ever done something extraordinary, and you'll find one thing in common. They learned to operate under tension. Not once, repeatedly. When I was building my career, there were weeks where everything felt like it was hanging by a thread, deals on the edge, bills stacked, clients hesitant. And in those moments, I discovered something. Panic kills clarity. But presence under pressure creates breakthroughs. You don't rise when things are easy. You rise when it's tight, when the walls close in, and you choose not to shrink. This is where most people tap out. They feel stress and pull back. They let emotion hijack execution. But those who act like failure is not an option, they learn to stay still inside the storm. They breathe slower, think sharper, move cleaner, and they win not because they had less pressure, but because they refuse to be rattled by it. Here's the secret. Pressure is not random. It's feedback. It's your body and mind alerting you that something matters, that what you're pursuing has weight. The amateur avoids that feeling. The professional leans into it and says, good, that means I'm in the right place. When you step into high-stakes situations with that mindset, when you stop bracing and start channeling, you begin to build something rare, inner voltage, the kind of energy that doesn't depend on caffeine or emotion. It's deeper. It's driven by mission, not mood. You can train this. It starts with exposure. Take on what scares you. Do it earlier in the day. Feel the edge and don't run. Watch how your mind wants to escape. Scroll, snack, talk, quit, and instead just sit with it. Then act. Every time you do that, you rewire the connection between pressure and performance. You stop seeing tension as danger and start treating it as an invitation to level up. Let me make this practical. Next time you feel behind, overwhelmed, uncertain, stop and ask, what would the version of me who always finishes do right now? Not later, now. Then do that. Because that's the microshift that builds the muscle of inevitability. You don't need more comfort, you need capacity. You don't need fewer challenges, you need stronger emotional posture. And the way to build that is to stop wishing things were lighter and start becoming someone heavier. I've coached high performers for decades. The ones who move fast, build big, and never disappear, they've mastered pressure. They don't eliminate it, they design with it. They schedule deep work in high-tension windows. They say yes to impossible timelines. They lead during chaos. And because of that, they move differently. They don't collapse. They convert pressure into precision, and so can you. But only if you stop romanticizing calm. Success isn't built in quiet. It's built in motion under fire. The more you expose yourself to pressure with intention, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, it becomes your edge. While others panic, you execute. While others stall, you simplify. While others fear collapse, you rise into clarity. In the next block, we're going to talk about what happens when the world still doesn't respond. When you're doing the work, staying consistent, pushing through pressure, and yet the outcome still feels far away. I'll show you how to build the patience and posture to stay in the game long enough for everything to click. Because acting like failure is not an option isn't just about intensity, it's about duration. Let's keep going. There's a specific kind of pain that most people never talk about, the pain of doing everything right and still not seeing results. You're consistent, you're focused, you've removed distractions, dialed in your routines, and yet it feels like nothing's moving. That's the moment when most people quit, not because it's hard, but because it's quiet. Let me tell you something most high achievers learn the hard way. Results don't come when you want them. They come when you're ready to carry them. You may think you're ready now. You may feel like you've already paid the price. But life has its own scoreboard, and sometimes your reward is waiting on the other side of one more silent stretch. This is the valley. It's where confidence gets tested. It's where belief becomes action. And it's where 90% of people stop, not because they're weak, but because they confuse absence of feedback with absence of progress. Just because you don't see the fruit yet doesn't mean the roots aren't growing. The people who win long-term are not the ones who hustle harder in the beginning. They're the ones who stay in the middle. They show up without applause. They execute without evidence. They move without momentum. And they do it because they've already decided, I'm not leaving. That's the posture I want you to develop. It's not glamorous. It's not sexy. It's not shareable, but it's unshakable. And when the rewards finally come, they come fast, because the compound effect of disciplined effort has been stacking in silence all along. I remember one stretch in my early career where for 6 months, nothing happened. No new clients, no new breakthroughs. I was speaking to small crowds, sending emails that got no replies, doing the work with zero visible return. And I'll admit, doubt started knocking. But every time it did, I reminded myself, my job isn't to control results. My job is to control execution. And that mindset, it's what kept me going. Because when the shift finally came, it wasn't gradual, it was explosive. The book hit, the deals landed, the momentum arrived. But none of it would have mattered if I had stopped digging just inches before the goal. This is what I want you to hear. Just because it's slow doesn't mean it's broken. Just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's wrong. And just because no one is watching doesn't mean it doesn't count. The world will notice later, but you have to act like it already matters now. If failure is not an option, then stopping can't be one either. Your discipline can't depend on visibility. Your execution can't depend on dopamine. Your patience must be as strong as your ambition. Because some of your greatest seasons won't feel like breakthroughs, they'll feel like silence. And that silence, that's the sound of the foundation being poured. Keep showing up, keep sharpening, keep moving forward in the dark, because results don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they build in the background until one day everything clicks and the world calls it overnight success. But you'll know the truth. You were building this long before it was visible. In the next block, I'll show you how to close the loop, how to go from consistent action to absolute inevitability. We're going to talk about decisiveness, intensity, and the unspoken habits of those who finish what they start every time. Because at the end of the day, acting like failure is not an option means moving like success is already guaranteed. Let's keep going. There's a moment in every long journey where something clicks. You've been pushing, you've been consistent, you've bled for progress no one sees, and then one day it feels inevitable. Not because the world finally gave in, but because you did. You gave in to your own power. You stopped waiting for permission. You stopped negotiating with discomfort. You realized, I finish what I start, period. That's the moment when you switch from trying to transmitting. Everything you do carries a different energy. Your posture changes, your tone sharpens. People feel it in your presence. You're no longer hoping it'll happen, you're closing the gap with every step. This is what it means to be a finisher. And finishers don't need applause. They need alignment. The truth is, most people don't fail because they weren't capable. They fail because they never committed fully. They dipped their toe in, they waited for momentum to show up before they did. But finishers, they move first, they act like it's working until it is. They don't need guarantees. They build their own momentum through consistent motion. They trust the process more than they fear the unknown. And here's what separates them from the rest. They operate from completion energy. Every day is approached like it's part of a finished story. They don't wake up wondering if they'll win. They wake up knowing today is another brick in a wall that will be built. That belief, it guides their actions, shapes their decisions, protects their time. Think of it like this. Most people play the game hoping to avoid losing. Finishers play like the score is already decided. They don't waste energy on doubt. They conserve fuel for what matters: execution, clarity, speed. They don't get distracted by the noise. They don't overthink the plan. They just move, clean, sharp, unstoppable. That's the habit I want you to build. Execution without hesitation. Not rushed, but precise. Not frantic, but focused. You're not reacting to life anymore. You're engineering your outcome in real time. That's the level of mental control that turns dreams into inevitabilities. So how do you get there? You start by eliminating the question, what if it doesn't work? You replace it with, how will I make it work? You remove options. You simplify decisions. You shorten the gap between idea and action. And you stop measuring your success by emotion and start measuring it by movement. Because people who act like failure is not an option don't over-celebrate progress. They stay in motion until it's done. And when doubt returns sand at will, you don't negotiate. You don't pause to explain yourself to the part of your brain that still wants to play it safe. You thank it for its concern, and you keep moving. Because you've already seen what happens when you hesitate. Nothing. Delay, distraction, regret. But when you move with certainty, clarity returns. Energy multiplies. And the path ahead, while still uncertain, becomes irrelevant because you've already decided to cross it. In the next block, we close with the final challenge, the call to burn your backup plan once and for all. Not as motivation, as a code you live by. Because when you move through life like there's no turning back, something awakens in you that no tactic, tool, or technique ever could. And from that place, there's nothing you can't do. There comes a moment where you stop planning for what if and start moving like what now. That's the final transformation. It's not about getting louder. It's about getting certain. You stop rehearsing your fallback story. You stop making space for a soft landing. You decide, this works because it must. And when you do that, you walk differently. You lead differently. You finish differently. People will feel it in you. They won't always know what changed, but they'll notice the absence of hesitation, the presence of purpose. You won't be seeking approval, validation, applause. You'll be too busy building, too focused on finishing, too committed to entertain the voice that once said, maybe later. That voice, it doesn't belong in your new life. Let me ask you now, directly, what's the backup plan you've been secretly holding on to? The story that says, if this doesn't work, I'll go back to X. That plant, the one you never say out loud, but you still think about when things get hard, that's the chain around your potential. Cut it. Burn the bridge. Remove the exit. Rip the parachute. Not recklessly, not with ego, but with clarity. You're not here to test the waters, you're here to cross the ocean. You're not here to dabble, you're here to dominate. There's no more space for maybe. There's only now, and there's only done. Because when you remove the possibility of failure, you ignite a deeper layer of power inside yourself. You activate clarity, not confusion. Precision, not panic. Execution, not excuse. The stakes sharpen your focus. The lack of fallback forces innovation. The commitment creates calm. You no longer wonder if you'll finish. You assume you will. And that assumption, it becomes a prophecy. That's how legacies are built. Not with perfect plans, but with unshakable posture. The willingness to keep moving in the dark. The discipline to stay even when momentum dips. The courage to keep showing up without needing a cheer squad or a clear path. So here's what I want you to do today. Choose the one area of your life where you've been halfway in, where you've been trying, where you've been protecting a plan B, and eliminate the escape. Replace it with responsibility. Replace it with intensity. Replace it with the decision to finish no matter what. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to move like there's no turning back. That's what acting as if failure is not an option really means. It's not motivational fluff. It's operational discipline. It's the refusal to shrink, stall, or start over one more time. This is the version of you that finishes, not because he feels ready, but because he refuses to let readiness decide. He moves now, he leads now, he builds now, and the world, it catches up. Or it watches in silence as he does what few are willing to do. No backup, no plan B, no later, no someday. Just you, the mission, the work, and the finish.